Good evening. Well, earlier this evening, you met my husband. And I have something to correct, Christopher. It's not to do with the proposing sex. Yeah, I did that. It was fine. It's not to do with having children to play his computer games. I can cope with that as a strategy. It's to do with the fact that I'm not a geek. And that he said I played netball for Scotland. Well, I did play netball for Scotland when I was under 16, but only because there's a lack of 6'2" females in Scotland, okay? They were desperate. So I am a geek. You can possibly tell that if you look really closely at me. Yep, some of you might have noticed in the front row that I'm wearing a binary watch. And not even that, I can tell you that it's exactly 110101 minutes past 1001. So there we go. So I am a geek, and I like going to parties. That might surprise any of you here who's not a geek. Who is a geek? Oh, that's good. You might understand my jokes. I like going to parties, and I have a slight problem at parties. People say to me, "What do you do for a living?" That might sound like a innocuous question to you, but for me it drives fear into my heart. Because I could say, I'm a mathematician, I have a degree in maths. But people always say, "Ugh, our family doesn't do maths." No, we're not, no, don't do maths in our family. I have to say that really annoys me, because I think if I said I study English, would they say, "Oh, we don't do English in our family"? No, we can't read. In fact, we're all completely illiterate. But with maths, it seems fine. I could say I'm a researcher in artificial intelligence. At that point, people go, and they throw up their hands in horror and say, "You're trying to take over the world." Yeah, thank you, Hollywood. Truth is, I work in a computing science department. But when you say that, you say, "I work in computing," people say, "Oh, I'm so glad you came to the party. It's wonderful to have you here. Could you just fix our printer?" Well, given I work in AI, I could teach your printer the emotion of love. Do they really think I did 3 years of a PhD in fixing printers? Yeah, maybe they do. Okay, so from that, where am I now? Well, I'm a woman in computing. And that's sometimes a bit hard going. There's not many of us around. In fact, you might never have met one before. But there has been one before. I mean, back in 1854, we had Ada Lovelace. Yeah. How did Ada have a good time of it? Well, she was taught maths by her mother to cure the insanity of having a poet for a father. Cure the insanity of having a poet. Her father was actually Lord Byron. And I think this is a fantastic metric that we should apply nowadays. So perhaps your father's a jazz musician. If your father's a jazz musician, I'm afraid there's nothing for it, but you've got to do a whole PhD in mathematics to counter that. Perhaps only your mother dabbles in flower arranging on a Saturday. In that case, we might let you off with standard grade computing. Anyone think that's okay? Okay. But Ada Lovelace didn't exactly have a very easy time of it. In Parliament, the place we all respect, supposedly, she was called a large, coarse-skinned young woman. So fat and ugly, basically. Yeah, I can identify with that. But she didn't really make things very easy for herself. She married her maths teacher. If I'd married my maths teacher, I would have married a man 30 years my senior. If I'm completely honest, Mr. Casal smelt slightly of yogurt, which doesn't really bode well. So what do I do? What am I now in computer science? Well, I'm actually head of undergraduate studies. That means I look after lots of students. Any students here? A few. Some people think my job is really hard because I've got to look after students. But let me tell you something, students are really easy. What's hard is the parents. Okay. I had an open day a number of years ago, and we did all our spiel about module choices and how fantastic the university is, as we do, and asked for questions. And a mother put her hand up and said, "What about sex?" At which point my colleague and I looked at each other and said, "What about sex?" And she said, "Well, you didn't cover it in your presentation." Like, okay. My colleague said, well, I've got 3 children. And then the mother said, no, I'm seriously concerned. There seems to be females on this course, and you're going to corrupt my son. I have just phoned the hall of residence, and I've seen you've got double beds. And you covered the whole things you could teach, but you never talked about sex education. Well, I can tell you, I've now been teaching this rather geeky, spotty, lanky son for about 3 years, and he's yet to be corrupted by a female. As far as I know, but I think it's unlikely. So given, I've said there's not many females in computing, it can be hard sometimes. Why do I still do it? Well, I'm going to try and tell you this in the way of song. And as I sing, you'll realise that I'm a scientist, an academic, and not a singer. But we'll try anyway, so here we go. When I find myself in times of trouble, then all my friends, they say to me, Karen, you really should code in C. Code in C, code in C, code in C, code in C. Java's just too modern, code in C. If you spent 30 hours trying to debug some assembly, then it's time you learn to code in C. Code in C, code in C, code in C, code in C. Prologue is dead and buried. It's code in C. Code in C, code in C, code in C, code in C. C++ has far too much syntax even to fit in the song, so code in C. Thank you.